Andy, I'm looking at these lines. You're seeing them on the screen. I can't believe it. Cleveland is up to 4 in some spots. We still don't really know about the health issues of the three
Right.
players that missed. Donovan Mitchell played out of his mind the other day, scored 48 or 49. I don't remember what it was. He got banged up so much. He was laying on the floor and it just was ugly. I don't know what's this money coming in on Cleveland is insane because in a normal, even if everybody was healthy, the Pacers are competitive. They're not going to roll over and die.
No, and it's interesting that the line actually opened with Cleveland, the slight road favorite, and for most of the last 36 hours or so, it was up to up to 4. I didn't see anything in the injury report that suggests that that any of those three guys, Hunter, um, Garland, and Mobley, are anything other than questionable right now. And then, of course, you've got Mitchell, although he does not appear in the injury report that came out yesterday afternoon. So I'm just surprised that we're seeing this total lack of respect for Indiana and the assumption that Cleveland is some powerhouse team that with a great tradition and a great legacy that they can overcome it the way that, for example, Golden State was able to overcome the absence in Game 1 of Curry going out early, and that other teams have overcome the absence of key players. I'm not so sure Cleveland. Uh, I can understand the support for Cleveland, but I just don't see this. This is the kind of game where, yeah, boy, I'd like to take Indiana at the start, and then be prepared that if the line is right and the movement is correct, get out of it, early in the second quarter, and basically, give up the vig for the night, and take take the big loss without any further harm, because it's just hard to see Cleveland so shorthanded. Now they do have the extra day of rest. They didn't have 1 day off. They had 2 days off in between games, but nonetheless, it's very surprising to see that all this money coming in on the Cavaliers, given the uncertain status, because this line move, Jim, seems like somebody out there or some people out there know that this line sounds like at least 2 of the 4 players that we talked about are going to play.
I'm pretty. I'm 90% sure Mobley is going to play, and he is a great defensive tool. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other two, I mean, I don't know. A matter of fact, I would say that you probably maybe have a 10 or 20% chance Garland would be there. I think he's probably the most hurt of all of them.
Right.
And then, of course, you have the fatigue issue of what Donovan Mitchell did 2 days ago, and how much that affects him. Did he get banged up enough to affect his play? Is he gonna be able to bring that kind of energy? I mean, he
Well,
was
that's
just
where that extra day of rest may actually help Cleveland. Because they played what? They played on Tuesday, so they had Wednesday. Normally they would have played on Thursday because the schedule is usually 2 games a night, but they only had the Golden State game played yesterday, so they could set things up for 2-2-2 on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the one that they happened to choose, because this schedule was known in advance before these injuries were all known, at least the ones other than the Garland. Was done in advance. So Cleveland knew that they were going to have this day off on Thursday a long time ago. So maybe the fatigue factor isn't as strong, at least entering the game. Where it may be a factor with these injuries is depending upon how many minutes any of these players play, this extra strain is going to place on the reserves who are now starting.
the um, if everybody was healthy from game 1 on, we very likely wouldn't be sitting here at Cleveland 0-2, having lost both games at home. That's
Right.
that's probable. Now, so what we have here is a desperation. It's basically an elimination game for Cleveland.
Effectively an elimination game, because
It is.
you
It's
don't come
not,
back from
but it
3-0.
is.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
they lose, if this one, I mean, nobody's ever come back from 0-3 in the history of the NBA, and it probably won't happen here if Cleveland goes down. I think that's where the money's coming from. Honestly, I think it's
Yeah,
a
but how
desperation
many
game.
teams have been in this type of situation with so many key players banged up that they've ever been in a situation where, well, yeah, we know they can come back and make it 2-1. This is a very unusual. I don't know if this is unprecedented or not, but I cannot recall a situation where a team had so many key players, even in the questionable status, entering into any playoff game, much less a key one where you're down 0-2 and on the road.
You know, Cleveland's been such an unfortunate situation sports-wise for so many years. They're just so unlucky about everything. I mean, LeBron,
well, let me put it to you this way. Remember when the NFL did away with the Pro Bowl, and then years before they used to do it with the runner-up bowl, they were going to rename it the Cleveland Bowl because Cleveland was always coming up just short.
Yeah, going back to that's right. That's true.
The runner-up bowl, yes.
We do have another game tonight, and then two on Saturday that we can talk about. Oklahoma City is now up. It's 4.5 up to 5.5 at Denver. The total has stuck pretty much at 233.5, and Oklahoma City put a whooping on them on Denver the other night. 149 points, I think it was. They put on them. You know, many times when you rub it in like that to another team, professional team, I think that's possibly the worst thing you can do. However, when you look at what's, the Celtics have done with 2 20-point leads and then take the foot off the gas and then end up losing the game. And that happened to OKC as well in game 1. Mm-hmm. So I don't blame them, for desperation time for them. They didn't want to lose. They didn't want to lose 2 in a row at home either. So it doesn't matter that much. But Denver is very difficult to beat at home. They're playing at elevation. They were tough at home against the Clippers, who had some stars also on that team. They are a little bit more veteran team with Jokic and Gordon and those guys, and of course Westbrook's playing much better than he has for years, and he's adding a lot to that team. This is a spot for me that I think this line is too inflated, and I know they want to win home court back, but that doesn't mean Denver's going to roll over and eat cheeseburgers the whole damn game. They're going to play too.
Yeah, in fact, my approach to this game, because I do respect Oklahoma City, they've been the team to beat, at least performance-wise, for basically the entire season. And I'm actually looking at the first half line in this game and looking Denver, perhaps even money line, since the line is only 2.5 by OKC. Maybe make a play if this line happens to touch 6. I might make a play on the full game Denver. But I agree with you. I think this is a spot where Denver, the embarrassment factor, I don't know that they necessarily mailed it in, but when you give up 149 points, that tells you that the opponent is trying. That Oklahoma City didn't have to score that much, didn't have to make, take quick shots and things like that. So there's that embarrassment factor. Plus, remember, Denver has been an NBA championship within the last, several years. So it's not as though this is a team that's new. In fact, they've got more experience recently than Oklahoma City does, although OKC had a nice little run last year in the playoffs. So I could see Oklahoma City making a run late, but then again, you're playing in altitude. The altitude normally would affect the visiting team more so than the home team. But these guys are pretty much used to it. I don't know that it plays such a big factor with good teams. With weak teams, it might play more of a factor. So I am looking Denver. I'm not sure I'm going to do anything with the total, but I'll probably look Denver money line first half, figuring they're going to get out to a big start to erase the memory of the embarrassment, and because they have the talent to do so, and then see how the game unfolds. But if this line goes to 6 during the day, because I wouldn't be surprised if it hits 6, and then the sharps, the wise guys, start coming back and taking a bit of Denver at this number.
I agree. If it would be a guarantee, the wise guys would take 6 if it ever hit 6, and I'm sure that there'll be some spots where there'll be some OKC money a little too much in the book. Whatever that book will be, they'll move it, but they'll get hit right away. Denver plus 6 would be if you want to, it's a big number. A lot of people don't recommend doing it, but you could go in there now at any book and buy a half point and take Denver plus 6. You can pay the extra dues if you want to.
The decision on that is whether or not we're going to see 6s early in the day, and whether that might even increase some additional money on the favorite, because 5.5, you could probably buy the 6 later today, because I would think that if the line hits 6, the wise guys might say, or the sharp money might say, let's give it a few minutes. Let's not act too quickly, unless it happens, within 2 hours before game time, and then it's getting close. But I mean, if let's say by noon Pacific time today we start seeing some sixes, they may wait to see if there's 6.5s, because if that line goes to 5.5, they'll probably be able to find the 6 out there at that time.
Moving on to Saturday, Boston, remarkably, lost 2 games at home, giving up 20-point leads in the second half. And I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to say it again and again and again, the Boston team is undercoached. They're too dependent on the 3. They don't play good fundamental basketball. They don't run enough plays away from the 3. They have the talent. Do they have the coach? See, when you look back at what they did last year, and I'm not trying to take anything away here. I'm just stating the facts. They did have a soft run in that championship run last year. They weren't playing teams that were totally upper echelon. There had been a number of upsets. Teams had disappeared. They end up with some seeds that were not higher seeds. Now, through the season, 65 winners this year. Best, they use the 3-point line more than anybody else, which means they're using other things in the offense less than anybody else. Keep that in mind. And if you're going to hit 17 to 25%, they've shot 103-point shots in this series, and they've hit 25 of them. That's 25% by any school math. That's pretty damn bad. Now, when you're shooting those kind of shots, you're not getting a lot of offensive rebounds because all your players are sitting on the outside, not crashing the boards. They don't follow shots in the NBA. It's terrible fundamentals. But the Knicks are gritty. Now, but they have been down twice by 20 points.
That's the concern.
Yes, they can get behind because they're not as talented. That is true. Even with only hitting 25% of their shots from 3, Boston has gotten to the point where they were up by 20 points in both games. So, I mean, here's a game. Boston's 5.5 on the road, 204.5, 205 is the total. And they're going to New York. New York is very gritty. They don't quit. This is another do or die situation. This is like Cleveland, except they have all their players healthy, except there's a possibility Porzingis might not be. And Hauser, there's a question on both of those guys. They're not really listed, but Porzingis has not really been effective for them.
And he's also going home to where he began his career with the Knicks, and so he'll be the target of some razzing, I'm sure, if he does play.
Sure
the Garden will be rocking as it hasn't. Garden will be rocking as it hasn't in probably decades on Saturday with the Knicks up 2-0.
We know this is a desperation situation, just like Cleveland. You don't want to go down 0-3. Nobody would want to do that.
I feel much more better laying the 5.5 with Boston than I do with Cleveland. Well, number one, I think Boston's the better team overall, certainly the deeper team. Number 2, Cleveland's got the injuries, and number 3, healthy rosters for Indiana and the Knicks. Indiana's a much better team than the Knicks.
That is true. Although the records would not indicate that. The Knicks actually have more wins on the season than Indiana. But if you look at it from January, February on, Indiana's as good as anybody in the league. That a lot of people don't talk about that. But since January, February, they are damn good. So you take away the November, December stuff, which you should anyway, because these teams don't exist anymore. This is I can't lay the points with Boston because I just don't trust that offense, that they can regenerate. They can do something. But I mean, they're very good on the road. I can see the point. I probably a pass on that game, or if I can see something about pace, I might be looking at this game to go under the total.
That was my first thought. I just thought this number might be a little bit too low.
Yeah, that may be the right way. Now, here comes the next game, and then we'll get another one, another injury issue here. Golden State, no Steph Curry. Now, if you look.
By the way, one last thing I want to point out about Boston, of the 20 teams that made it to the postseason and I'm probably this will hold true for the entire league. Boston led the league in fewest points allowed per game on the road this season. Their 33-8 straight up record is better by 5 games than their home record. For some reason, and we see that very rarely as far as any team in almost any sport. Well, maybe football is different because you play so few games, but in basketball and certainly in baseball, you rarely see teams with better home records than road records, and you rarely see anything with this sort of outstanding road record, 33-8. I mean, you're talking about like the Chicago Bulls during their run when they were winning 70 games.
Correct. It is unusual. They have played better on the road, which is, I mean, you're dealing with, and they're always shooting 3-point shots. So your back lines and stuff. I mean, that really is a weird stat to have. Now we move on. And then
again, by the way, Thibodeau used to coach the Celtics, so he knows a lot of the used to be there on the staff there for a while, so he knows some of the Knicks players. Although there's so much change on a year-to-year basis that it doesn't hold the significance that it used to be years ago when players were with teams for almost their entire career, and so you always knew the player if you were a coach or something or a manager who went to a different team. Not as much these days, but there's still a little bit of familiarity.
No, things have definitely changed. People move around a lot more. Minnesota, Golden State. Minnesota bounced back. They had the big victory over Golden State the other night. No Curry. We know that. We don't know when he's coming back or if he's coming back. We don't know that. Hamstrings are difficult to recover from. And he's not the young man that he once was. Well, none of us are. But this is another game, Minnesota 4.5 up to 5. I see 5.5s up there as well. I don't see it ticking up to 6 at any point, but I'm seeing there's definitely a lot of 5s. The total 201.5 down to 200, mostly 200s, maybe a little 200.5. The 201s are pretty much gone. Maybe one place might have one, but Golden State the other night, you see what Steve Kerr did the other night, and he was talking about it in an interview. They played 13 players. Yeah. And he wanted to see who had what in a game situation. So he saw a couple players that brought enough energy, enough.
This was effectively a preseason game for Golden State.
It was like a preseason game. It was. They were trying to see what the hell we're going to do, because he said our game plan is set up around Curry. Now, if you don't have any Curry, you got to have a different game plan. Okay, so you're going to see a different team on Saturday night than you saw the other day. You're going to probably see a different team than you've seen ever from Golden State, because they're going to have to go through other players. They're going to have to run their offense through other players. Buddy Hield has stepped in and done some good things for them in a couple of the games, but he is inconsistent. That's always been the problem with him. I didn't see Jimmy Butler step up that much the other night, but the game plan was to try to test out other players. So I'm not going to put a rap on playoff Jimmy for that, because that was more Steve Kerr just feeling it out. What are we going to do going forward?
Which is what a good coach does, by the way.
Pardon me?
What a good coach does, by the way, is exactly what Steve Kerr did. They already got the win that they needed on the road, that they wanted. They know they're going to face a tough time back home with the Curry situation. Let's see how we play, so that when we come back home and we're now playing at home and we now need to take 1 and possibly 2 games, let's make sure we can get at least 1 game by seeing what we have and what we're going to have to do in games 3 and 4.
That's exactly. So here's a game, 4.5, 5, the total down to 200. To me, this is real tough, because Golden State could lose this one, pick up the next one, go back 2-2 to Minnesota. The very, very tough situation here, but I'm kind of thinking this is going to be Golden State's big effort. I think they called it in the other day with 13 players trying to feel out things. I think, and the other side of this is Minnesota is not going to know what to expect either.
That's exactly why I think this is the game for Golden State, because when Minnesota sees what Golden State does tonight, they'll be prepared on Sunday for what they won't be prepared for tonight.
I'd say Golden State's probably the right take here. I see one. Well, I'm starting to see some 5.5. So this is another one here where, and I'm going to maybe suggest this. These 5.5 road favorites that's a dangerous damn number, man. And then you get in there and you start saying, well, maybe I can get a 6. And the 6 is a big number, and they do score by 1s, 2s, and 3s. So if you figure it out, 6 is a big number. And I would say that Golden State plus the points, definitely Denver plus the points, from my perspective. Yeah. And then the Knicks is an issue because I don't know what the hell to think of a team that shoots 25% from threes, and that's what they depend on. If they can, I don't know if they can change that. I don't know if they're just going to be cold for 4 or 5 games. I don't know. So right now, I know what the Knicks do, and they do it consistently.
They don't quit.
They play tough. They're physical. Yeah. However, they're not as good. So, but they come out in the end because they don't make mistakes and shoot, depend on the 3. So you got 3 home dogs here, 4 home dogs. I didn't even realize that till I just said it. There are actually 4 home dogs here.
Yeah. Now the thing that's the thing that's interesting is compare Cleveland and Boston, and Cleveland may end up getting up to that high number. I mean, where is it right now? It's at Cleveland tonight 4. Is 4. A lot of 4s. Maybe, yeah, that's probably where it ends up. But they opened, 1.5. Compare that to Boston, also down 0-2, and they didn't open at 1.5 and move up. They moved up. They opened at 5, and they've actually moved up a little bit. I think Circa opened them at 4.5, and I think Offshore had opened 4.5. But it didn't take long to get up to 5.5. So you compare the 2 situations. One, Cleveland didn't look all that great, and especially the way they lost that last game. On the other hand, Boston was good enough. We know they're good enough to get 20-point leads. So maybe that explains why Cleveland opened up so low and Boston opened up so high. Cleveland hasn't shown in those 2 games that they can get out to a big lead and just didn't have enough to finish, even with the injuries, especially in game 2. But certainly Boston.
Andy, in game 2, Cleveland was up 17 the second half.
They were up by 12, I think, when it was just a few minutes to go.
Yeah, that was what a crash they had. That was unbelievable. Yeah, but your point is excellent. That this is the very unusual card when you have 4 games, 8 teams, and you have all road favorites. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
No, and especially because the 4 home teams that we played, what did they win? 6 or 7 of those games outright as road dogs, as big road dogs in the first games of the series, the first 2 games of the series. So it's really an interesting dynamic. And again, I'm looking at the Cleveland and Boston situation. Boston has shown that, and they had shown prior to this series that they owned the Knicks, all those wins in a row, and they owned them in the first 2 games for 41 of the 48 minutes or something.
You're right.
So I feel more comfortable that Boston can come through with the effort, especially because they're healthy for the most part. I can't come up with that same situation for Cleveland. So I can certainly make at 1.5, I could almost make a case for Cleveland. But until we know the status of those 3, let's say 3.5 players who are injured, let's say Mitchell banged up a little bit as a half player, I don't know that I could feel comfortable taking Cleveland. I can understand why people played, why people played Cleveland to move this game up from 1.5 to 4, because Cleveland's season is on the line. Yeah, but you're talking about a season on the line with, 3 of the players who got you to where you were to be the number 1 seed not being able to play, most likely.
I could never lay Cleveland in the spot. I could not do it. I mean, Indiana from January on was as good as Cleveland, and
they got a lot of confidence too.
Yeah, they got a ton of confidence. But I could start looking at some of these totals on games that I'm a little confused on. So this is good stuff. Andy, we have take a little break. Be back a little bit later with a baseball show that we're going to do. The good stuff. Thanks for today, and everybody out there, good luck. Thanks for tuning in to the basketball jam. And remember, this is Proline TV on YouTube. And, subscribe, like, hit the bell, make sure you get notice on all the shows that we do. you can actually type in prolinetv.com and you get to the same place. So that's one other way to get there. But Andy, thanks. We'll be back in a few.